Einen donnernden Applaus bitte für Lena.
So big applause to Lena Schaumann.
Thank you.
Wo ist der Drücker, wenn ich das erst
Where's the
einmal
prompter?
hier... Ach, perfekt.
Ah, here
Vielen
it
Dank.
is. Thank you.
Ja, schön, dass ich heute hier sein darf.
It's great that I can
Und
be
zum
here
Anfang
today.
möchte ich gerne
Thank
mein
you.
absolutes
And in the
Lieblingszitat
beginning,
hier
I'd
einmal
like to give
bringen.
you
Und
my
zwar,
favorite quote.
Anfangen hilft.
It helps to
Diesen
start.
Satz hat mein Vater früher immer zu
This
mir
is what my
gesagt,
father
in
used to
jeder
tell me
gottverdammten
in
Situation.
every and
Und wie
any
das oft so ist mit
situation, and as
Sätzen,
it
die
usually is
Eltern
with
einem oft
these
sagen, gehen mir an
sentences that you
sehr, sehr
hear
vielen
from your
Stellen
parents very
gehörig
often.
auf den Geist. Ich glaub,
It's sometimes
jeder von
so
euch kennt
annoying.
das, dass
I
man
think you all
gewisse
know
Sätze
that.
einfach
There's
nicht mehr hören kann.
some sentences you
In jeder
just don't
Situation
want to hear
erzählen
anymore.
bekommen. Ja,
I
saß ich vor
heard
dem
it all
großen
the time,
Zahlenberg,
whatever I
kurz vorm
did.
Mathematikabitur,
First, before I had to do
100%ig
my
sicher, dass ich das niemals schaffen
my final
werde.
exam in
Und der Papa
mathematics
läuft
in
fröhlich durch
school,
die Wohnung und sagt,
and I
"Ach,
thought
Anfang
I'd
hilft,
never
du schaffst das
manage to
schon."
do that.
Genau
And
das waren die
my
Momente,
daddy
wo
said,
man so am liebsten
it helps
mal
to start, and
rausgeholt
I
hätte.
would have
Aber
really
dann
liked
gibt's
to
natürlich
smack
auch
him
die
for that.
Momente, oft
But there are
Jahre
also other
später,
moments,
wo man sich
years
eingestehen
later,
muss,
when you have to just
verdammt, vielleicht hatte mein
admit to
alter Herr doch ein
yourself,
bisschen
hey,
recht.
maybe he was
Und
right.
anfangen hilft tatsächlich.
And it's really
Und
helpful to start.
ja, es wurde eben schon gesagt, ich bin Unternehmerkind.
As I
Mein
said, I
Vater
am
führt in
the
dritter
daughter of an
Generation das Möbelhaus
entrepreneur.
Schaumann hier in Kassel,
My
das
father
hoffentlich alle
is
kennen.
in third
Mein
generation
Urgroßvater hat
the
es
manager
vor
of
109
the
Jahren
furniture
gegründet.
company Schaumann.
Und ich war mir
My
28 Jahre
great
meines
grandfather
Lebens
founded it more
sicher,
than
dass es entweder mit
109
meiner
years ago.
Generation
And
zu
I
Ende
thought
geht, die
for many years,
Familientradition,
25 years, that
oder
either
aber einer
my
meiner beiden
generation would
Geschwister
end
das
this
Unternehmen
tradition
übernehmen
or
würde.
one of my
Weil für mich
siblings
war
would
der Berg
take
definitiv
over
viel zu groß.
the
Ich
company.
konnte
But
mir
for
das
me,
überhaupt
because
nicht
for me,
vorstellen.
this mountain
Und
was
da
too
hat auch
high.
alles
I
Anfang
could
hilft
never
von meinem
imagine it,
Vater
and
so überhaupt
even
nichts
all
gepasst.
the it helps to start sentences
Wie
of
schon
my father
gesagt,
didn't help.
ich wollte das auf
As
gar
I said,
keinen Fall.
I really
Also habe ich
didn't
so
want
das
that.
gemacht,
So
was
what
man
did I
halt so
do?
macht, wenn man auf
I
gar
did what
keinen
you
Fall in
usually do if you
Familienunternehmen, ein
don't
Möbelhaus
want
einsteigen
to
will.
start
Man studiert
working
mal so ein
in
bisschen
the
BWL,
furniture
weil
shop
damit
of your
kann man ja
father.
alles so ein bisschen machen.
You study
Man
business
macht 1, 2
economics because you can do
Praktika,
everything with
vielleicht auch
that.
3,
Maybe you do have a
4,
few
davon in der
internships,
Möbelbranche, na ja,
one of
okay.
them in the furniture
Man geht
industry,
mal so ein halbes
okay.
Jahr nach Hause,
Then
guckt
you
sich
go
das
home for half a
Unternehmen mal
year,
an,
you
um
look
mal
at the
wirklich sicher zu gehen, dass man
company
das
to
auch
make
wirklich
sure
machen
that you
will.
really don't
Und dann
want
gründet man einen Online-Shop
to
für
be the successor. And then what you do is you open
ja,
an online shop
spulen wir mal
for
zurück
furniture.
in so den 2018.
Let's
Zu
go
dem
back to,
Zeitpunkt
let's say,
war ich in Berlin
2018.
und
At
ich
that
war
time, I was in
Gründerin
Berlin,
von
and I was the
Lumizil,
founder
was
of
eben schon kurz
Lumicil.
angesprochen wurde.
It has
Wir
been
hatten ein
mentioned before in the
Office mitten am
introduction.
Rosenthaler Platz,
We had an
also wirklich
office in the
in
middle
der
of
Tech-Szene
Rosenthaler Platz,
Berlins.
that's
Und
in the
unsere
tech scene of
Mittagspausen
Berlin.
sahen nur allzu oft
And
so
our
aus, als ob
lunch breaks
irgendwelche
usually
Townhall-Events mit Mark Zuckerberg
were
oder
full
weiß der
with
Himmel
town
was unsere Zeit
town
verbracht
hall
haben.
events with Mark Zuckerberg and so
Kassel war
on.
für mich
Kassel,
wirklich
to me,
sehr, sehr, sehr weit weg.
was very far away.
Wir waren vollends digitalisiert, logischerweise.
We were
Ihr habt eben schon
totally
gehört, wir sind
digitized.
natürlich Plenty-Seller
Of course,
gewesen.
we've
Ja, die
been plenty
Prozesse,
sellers, of course.
waren so
All
automatisiert,
processes
dass
we
wir
were
eigentlich
so
kaum Manpower
automated that we
brauchten.
hardly
Deswegen
needed
hatten
any
wir ein sehr, sehr
manpower.
kleines
And this
Team.
is why we had a very
Und
small team.
trotzdem saß ich irgendwie in Berlin
Still,
und mir war
I was sitting in
langweilig.
Berlin and I felt
Mir war sogar
bored.
richtig langweilig.
It
Und
was
manchmal,
so
selbst wenn ich jetzt
boring.
darüber nachdenke, ist mir
And
immer
when I
noch
think
langweilig.
about it, I'm still
Aber ich wusste
bored.
gar nicht so richtig, woran es liegt.
But I
weil
didn't really know
Arbeit hat
why,
definitiv
because I had
genug. Trotzdem war es,
enough
wie
to
gesagt,
work, but
langweilig.
still it was
Zur
boring.
gleichen Zeit im schönen
At the same
Nordhessen
time,
hier in Kassel
in
sprach
Kassel,
natürlich die Möbelbranche auch
furniture
2018 von
industry in
nichts anderem. Und
2018
damit war die Möbelbranche ja schon einigen Branchen
talked about
deutlich
nothing else
hinterher.
but digitalization. It
Und
was lagging behind
ich
other
guckte
industries,
so
of
ein bisschen
course,
nach
at that
Kassel,
time.
fand das irgendwie spannend, dass
So
wir
I
darüber
came to
sprechen
Kassel. I
und
found
fand
it
vor allem
interesting
cool,
that they
weil
were
mein Vater
discussing
wurde
this, and I found
neugierig
it
und hat
cool
natürlich
because my
immer mal
father
geschaut,
became
was machen wir
curious,
eigentlich da in Berlin?
and he
Und dann war
looked
der
at
Berg
what
für
we
ihn
did in
plötzlich
Berlin,
ziemlich
and
groß
all
und
of a
es war
sudden the
wahrscheinlich das
mountain
erste
was
Mal in
too
meinem
high
Leben,
for
dass ich
him,
sagen
and that
konnte,
was
Herr
the
Papa,
first
Anfang
time
hilft.
in my life when
Sag es
I could
einfach mal.
say,
Und konnte
well,
endlich mal
Daddy,
den Satz
it helps to
zurückgeben, den
start.
ich
So I
vorher
could
immer selber
actually
gehört hatte.
give him the sentence he
Ja,
used to give
ich
me all
saß
the
halt in
time.
Berlin, guckte nach
So I
Hause
was
und
in
musste für
Berlin.
mich feststellen,
I looked back
ich bin
to
echt
my
neidisch.
home, and I
Ich bin
found out
neidisch
I was
darauf, dass mein
envious.
Vater ein Unternehmen
I
führt, was
envied
ein
my
People-Business
father,
ist und nicht
who
wie
could
bei
actually
mir
manage a company which is a
gefühlt so ein
people business and not
emotionsloses
like
Tech-Business.
an
Und ich bin
emotionless
vor
tech
allem neidisch
business like
darauf,
I
dass
was
mein
in.
Vater die Chance
And I
hat,
was
ein
envious
so ein
because my
geiles
daddy had the
Unternehmen mit einer über
possibility
100 Jahre alten Tradition
to have
noch
such
mal
a
völlig neu zu
cool
erfinden,
company
neu zu
with more than
überlegen und
100
mit
years of
dieser
tradition
neuen
and
Welt
reinvent it,
zusammenzubringen.
to bring it together with a
Aber
new
nicht nur
world.
das, ich
But
musste mir
not
auch
just that. I had to admit, maybe it's wrong not to be the successor. My gut feeling just tells me I cannot imagine anything better than do what my great-grandfather started more than 100 years ago. This idea to make something new of this traditional thing was so great to me that I had to admit to myself that I should go back to Kassel. And there was one thing I learned, because we agreed that we would have the first digitalization project at Möbel Schaumann. So we took one department, there was a lamp department. Imagine such a furniture house or company. The lamps are maybe 2% of the whole revenues. And we tried to bring that together with our online shop, the lamps. So I came from Berlin, I had a huge ego, and I thought they would all wait for me, and we will show Möbel Schaumann that it helps to start and that we will manage and everything will be digitalized with the lamps. Great surprise. In Kassel, no one really waited for me. And I remember the sentence of my dear colleague Heidi at the time. She had been working for 20 years at Möbel Schaumann. She had known me from my childhood, and she told me, Lena, you've got no idea what you're talking about. And if you don't start listening, I'm just waiting for the moment when you go back to Berlin. Well, actually, that hit me quite square. So I thought, okay, I hit the wall. Ego is still big. I was in Berlin, and I thought, okay, if they don't want it, it's not my fault. But for those two reasons that I just mentioned, I noticed that my heart was beating for Möbel Schaumann. So I had to actually admit I would have to look at myself and maybe the mistakes I made. So I called my father and I said, let's talk about succession. But I suppose you want digitalization from me, and everyone expects it of me. I will do that, but will not do it first, because there's something which is much more important, and that's the human factor. Without humans, it won't work, and we have to take care of that first. In April 2019, that must have been April, yes, I came back home, and that's where I started. We first dealt with ourselves, with the humans who work for Möbel Schaumann, who are before and behind Möbel Schaumann. So I mean, of course, the employees. You see a few of them here. But I also meant the customers, the suppliers, the non-customers, those people who leave our house and said, no, I didn't buy anything here. People in Kassel on the roads who might know us, but maybe not. So we asked a lot of questions. I wanted to go into the vision. I was really high life. I had my vision. This is how Möbel Schaumann should look like in 2 or 3 years. But people weren't on the same level. So there was a real meeting where we all complained. For 3 or 4 months, we talked only about what is really going wrong, what we really don't like, what is crap, what went wrong over 100 years. So that was very problem-oriented. No one was able to look into the future together with me and to dream. And there were a few moments when I thought, no, I can't do it anymore. We have to stop it. Fortunately, we didn't, and we managed to have the turnaround. After a while, we agreed all together, very consciously, that now is the time to bring everything to the table. Everyone can say whatever they don't like in the company. But then we'll have a cut, and then we agree that from that moment on, we leave everything. We start at zero, and then we will look forward, and only forward. And then came the real good questions, because then we asked, where do we want to go? And what was really important, what do we want to stand for? When will we be proud employees of Schaumann? When would we like to go shopping there? What is needed to do that? And the answer was not something like an online shop. It was about much different things. We're asking ourselves, are we selling furniture, or are we doing much more than that? So this project got some dynamics, and it all of a sudden got a name, Smile. You can see it here, and people said smile brings the smile back. So we formed a team which specifically dealt with this topic, and we did this bottom-up. We didn't start with the managers. We actually left them at the side. But we took people from each and every department, and we asked them, what will be our vision? What is it we really do? We're not selling furniture, we're doing something else. And the employees designed these buttons. It was not coming from me. And they're quite proud to walk through our shops and stores with this smile button. And when they talk to customers, I heard very often that they proudly talked about this smile idea. So we came to the dream mode, but it didn't really get flight. So everyone was waiting for me to be smile. And whenever there's a small glitch, and sometimes in the process there might be things that are not so good, like a termination, and very often we heard, but that wasn't really smile, Lena. Do you think that will work? And then, of course, and fortunately, we had this moment when 20 to 30% of the employees really started to believe that we are changing. And those 20 or 30% started to run ahead, even ahead of me, and they actually took all the others with them. And that was really fortunate, because I would never have managed to do it by myself. And that shows again that without people, it doesn't work. Without the others, it doesn't work. And about 9 or 10 months passed, and then, I don't know, do you know the book Big Five for Life by John Strzelecki? You might know it. He talks about the purpose of existence, and we had our purpose all of a sudden. Furniture and kitchen Schaumann, our hearts feel home. We're not selling furniture, we are selling the home. In particular, in times of COVID, and we just heard it, what could have been more important than the home? At home, in your own house or home or office, that became so much important. And home means so much more to us. Of course, it's the home of our customers that we are furnishing, but home starts with us. We receive customers as a host. We design the home with the customer. We're a home for our employees when they come in the morning at 8 o'clock and leave the company in the evening. To give just a brief insight into what Smile is and bring across the feeling, maybe, I have a little video here for you.
Einmal Schaumann, immer Schaumann. Mir gefällt's hier, ich fühle mich wohl.
I like it here.
Smile, eine gute Sache.
Smile, that's a good thing.
Smile bedeutet für mich, immer freundlich zur Arbeit zu fahren, freundlich mit den Mitarbeitern umzugehen.
Be friendly with your employees.
Smile ist für mich, dass man sich gegenseitig im Team unterstützt, dass man Verständnis zeigt und vielleicht auch für andere Abteilungen sich mehr interessiert.
Smile bedeutet für mich, dass wir dem Kunden mit einer anderen Höflichkeit gegenübertreten, als es normal so in Möbelhäusern üblich ist, unsere Herzlichkeit vermitteln und dass der Kunde wirklich das Gefühl hat, in einem ganz besonderen Möbelhaus mit einer besonderen Atmosphäre zu sein.
Wir alle zusammen mit dem ganzen Team an der Weiterentwicklung von Möbel Schaumann arbeiten.
Das Wichtigste ist einfach der Kunde. Wenn man mit dem Kunden spricht, man entwickelt einfach eine Bindung zum Kunden und nachher geht der Kunde nicht als Kunde raus, man ist einfach schon fast Freund mit dem Kunden. Das ist einfach phänomenal geil.
Smile bringt das Unternehmen nach vorne. Und zwar wird Smile von innen heraus nicht nur das Lächeln, sondern das Herz nach draußen getragen. Und das ist für mich Smile, ein Herz zu zeigen.
Ein nettes Miteinander mit den Kollegen und mit der Geschäftsleitung.
Smile ist ein im Moment sehr, sehr positiver Umbruchprozess, der, sagen wir mal, Schaumann als Unternehmen von anderen abhebt.
Das Besondere ist, dass wir stete Veränderungen haben, wie jetzt das Smile-Projekt, dass wir immer daran arbeiten, aktuell der Beste zu sein.
Ich hoffe, es ist ein bisschen rübergekommen. Das ist wirklich ganz,
so
ganz viel mit Emotionen
tatsächlich zu tun hat.
Wir uns sozusagen von alleine emotional sehr, sehr stark aufgeladen haben.
We just loaded ourselves with emotions right from the beginning, but there was something else, and that was put to the side, and that's digitalization. But it wasn't really at the side anymore, because what happened throughout this whole process, when you talk about our hearts feel home, we want to have a home of the customer, what is the customer wanting to have? Of course, the online shop came up. And of course, we talked about we need a new IT infrastructure and so many other things. So within the process, before we even actively discussed digitalization, we started to digitalize. So digitalization became our favorite colleagues. That was one of my colleagues saying that, because we gave everything to digitalization that we didn't want to do anymore. That was stupid typing or routine tasks that we did, but we didn't have time for that because we want to take care of the home and the customer. Because all of a sudden we had a different vision. We believe in stationary trade, actually, and I heard a few things like retro. Yes, yes, we believe in that, and we believe in omni-channel trade, and that is why it's so good to have plenty markets. And the vision is we want to make people enthusiastic. We want them to come into our company and leave it surprised and happy. They must have the feeling that the furniture store they are buying their furniture in is different. And they should actually have that feeling when buying, but also then later on when they go home. So that means we don't have time to take care of things that a technology can do so much better. So digitalization became our freedom fighter because it gave us the time and the money to take care of the things that we really want to take care of. And all our colleagues all of a sudden asked for things that even I didn't have in mind. But for many things, I could just open the drawer and say, hey, I thought about this and I just waited for you to want this, so let's start. And now, looking back, I can say an online shop, a new online shop, or Schaumann at that time didn't even have an online shop, new homepage, a totally new IT infrastructure. It was a huge project in furniture trade. When from warehousing to accounting, you have to change everything and have a new IT. It worked within 8 months. If the motivation is right and people know why they're doing it, it's going to work. So all of a sudden, the employees got faster than me, and they demanded of me. They said, Lena, how can I take care of that when I don't have the right tools at hand with which I can show the home? If it takes so long, 3 minutes till something is loaded up, and if processes aren't digital. The learning from that was quite clear. And if there's anything you take home today, take this. Human is the next big thing. For years, we talked about digitalization, technological progress, and so on and so forth. And it's all right and good. But at the end of the day, all of you show that digitalization would never work if you don't have the right people in the background who design it. And this is why it's no longer a question, and this is more about stationary tools. It's not a question of whether to digitize, but how to do it. How to make use of those things in order to overcome the challenges that we have in front of us. I don't want to talk about this for too long. Diversity, female empowerment, sustainability, these are topics which are so much more important. And for this, we need digitalization. And to be honest, no customer would ever decide today to have a blue couch because it's so nice. But they decide for Antje, this one consultant who gave him such a good advice that in the end he had something much better than he could ever imagine. Or he decides for Melanie on the phone, who managed even during a complaint to make him smile because she found a creative solution. But he also decides for people in back office like Julia, who is in the marketing and every day has to come up with 5,000 new things in order to convey the feeling that we take care of the home and that this is important to us. And the same in the online shop for those people who write the one email which is not just an automatic reply and who do what Antje on the phone, what Antje is doing on the shop floor. And employees do not decide for Möbel Schaumann because we pay good money, or maybe not. They decide for me, for my managers, and what we stand for, and they have to, because otherwise they wouldn't fit into the team. So we have to take care that it fits, because otherwise we would get into a conflict of interest. Which means you need the people-first approach. And I hear entrepreneurs saying, but we don't have time for that. We have to take care of the figures, the numbers, we need success. Without money, it won't work, and that's all true. But there's this nice sentence stating not everything you can measure will count, and not everything that counts can be measured, and that's important. Yes, it's true. People's approach cannot be measured. It doesn't have an influence, and you can say, okay, revenues went up 5%. No, it has an influence on everything. And very often the way is quite foggy. And I hope you heard what I said. There was not just one moment when I said, no, I won't do it. it. I'm sorry, it's too much. I will go. It's foggy, but after a while, it's successful, and I'm sure it will get even more successful. My people first makes us more successful and faster. Our history can show that. And I would even say people first is the only possibility in the future to be successful. And when we talk about success, we also not have to talk about being successful today, but today being in a situation that we will be successful tomorrow when all the disruptions are coming. And for that we need teams and people who have a mindset that they can solve every goddamn task whenever it comes. Now, what is needed to switch the culture to people first? To me, there are three elementary things I'd like to share with you. First, I think what you need is courage. Courage to have a new mindset. Just throw overboard old things. Think outside the usual structures. We usually talk about the Generation Y, and all the young generations are thinking in much more individual terms. They put into question what society is showing as an example and how they can position themselves in society. And I think that's good. That's exactly what needs to happen. We need to focus on ourselves and see how we can redesign things, how we can make things more individual. And for that, it's necessary to have people with courage, who have the courage to ask or to doubt the traditional things and maybe also make mistakes. And we can also decide to change our view. We can always say, okay, risk, if we focus too much on people, what might happen to the figures? What might happen to the revenues and sales? Will we forget our processes? Or we can see it's a big opportunity to reinvent ourselves, and we trust into the fact that all the other things come automatically, because who says that this is two different things that cannot go hand in hand? And I think if we are brave enough to design it in a way that it fits into the world but also fits to us, then success will come from a very honest and intrinsic motivation. What's needed for that is trust. And of course you have to trust yourself and your own way, but you also have to trust your employees and your managers. I don't think there's anything more important. I want to be a visionary. I want to be a rebel too, of course, a very kind rebel. And I want to be able to start 5,000 times again. Maybe very often not be successful, but stand up again and do it. And for this, I need my employees to cover me, but I have to cover them as well. I have to have their back, and I have to encourage them to walk faster than I do, because then we can achieve much more. And for that courage, you have to be certain that you can make mistakes and still can go on. So courage, innovation, and creativity, I think, can be had only if there is enough trust. This is why I would appeal to all the managers that I see in this room. Let your people go ahead of you. Protect them from behind, but do not always run in front of them. And a lot of great things will happen. And I ask all employees to be demanding, to challenge us, the managers. Don't just do what we tell you. Design together with us. And the third point, who would have thought it? It helps to start. That's always helpful, of course. So I think it's time to go on in digitalization, but to see it as what it is. It's something that will give us a lot of time, resources, and money to deal with the really important things that we see in front of us today. My favorite quote is, people work hard for money, harder for a person, hardest for a purpose. And that's what I'd like to give you here, and I'd like to thank you all.
Thank you so much, Lena. Schaumann. As far as the subject purpose is concerned, we will talk about that later. I've got a detailed question for your analysis division. You were talking about figures and numbers. Did they have the number to change and transact figures here? We have an office. Lumisiel team went to Kassel, and they had at the door Back to the Future, and our accountant said, okay, we would also have cool name, so changing data, changing figures. So they were conceiving this. You were talking about center the motivation. You were emphasizing motivation. People who are intrinsically motivated, they manage to do that in the company. In the digital sector, we have skills as an important subject. We need to deal with new technologies. We need to discover trends. Professor Riek was talking about 3D printing. How do you cope with this? How do you cope as a team with this to elaborate these skills? So maybe one or the other employees, despite motivation, is not in the position to do this. Well, basically, I've not experienced this today. We, for new team members, we employ them according to personality characteristics. I don't focus the skills so much because skills can be learned, but motivation needs to be appropriate. But of course, we get the expertise and the knowledge from the outside. It's good to prosper. We have a strong connection to Berlin, to the startup world. It's very important to get the knowledge and the expertise to get on the right way. So how do you cope with the subject of 3D printing? Did you ever have strategical minutes or days or where you say, where comes disruption from? Not 3D printing, to be honest. We discussed this in the branch, but we are a classical furniture trader and we don't cope with this in detail, but we are discussing it and we are closely networked to our producers in order to discuss these things. So for me, I could realize that I need a lot of time in order to have this creativity, in order to have a look at these things. I often go to Berlin, and for me, this is the innovation place, and since 3 months, I try to get some free deadlines here in order to look outside the office to cope with these subjects. So you have a free day and you go to Berlin, although you said that's so boring in Berlin. No, I'm not going to Berlin all the time, but not always in the 4 walls. Everything moves around 3D printing and digitalization, also other subjects, of course. So the question to you, are there any questions to Lena Schaumann? You could also ask her the entire evening, and maybe there are some questions from the round. So if I had a microphone, it would be easier to go around. I've got one question to you, Lena. You were talking about being at home as an idea for the company. Does this reach the customer? We were discussing this declining loyalty to markets, to companies, because internet offers all the options. Well, on the one hand, Corona really played a little bit against us because we realized that the customers, because they were home so much time, that they appreciate coming back into the stores. And we realized this quite strongly. We get a lot of good feedbacks from customers. They said, okay, 10 years ago we were in your store, and it's crazy what happened. It's amazing what has changed, and they realize it very strongly, and they decide in favor of us. We have a very good market situation here in Kassel. We can perfectly develop and stretch our resources here and position ourselves. Is this an idea for a further development? If loyalty with the people exists, you could also talk about a second-hand market. Is this a topic for you? No, it's not really a topic for us, but absolutely we also think in the industry about this. We think about the generations, the coming generations, where possession is not so important, sustainability is more in the focus, not disposing of anything, recycling. We need to talk about this, yes. TV, seat, furniture, Schaumann. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation.